Good day, and welcome to my devotional for today. We're looking at Proverbs chapter 7, verse 10 today. I didn't get on yesterday, and so sometimes that happens, but here I am today, and we'll hopefully be on all the rest of the week. But here we are, Proverbs chapter 7, verse 10. And just before I read it, I want to remind you of the story. So, what's happening here in Proverbs chapter 7 is a little story that a father tells his son, and he's telling him to choose good, to choose moral life, and to defend himself against immorality, in particular against adultery, and being unfaithful to his wife, and so on. So he tells this story about how he looked out and saw this young man. The father saying to his son, which of course is meant to be, God saying to us. It's like the image of, I looked out through my window, I saw this young man who was foolish, and he went in the dark and in the evening and the late into the night, and he went to this street where he meets this woman, and he ends up having, she's like, my husband's away, and so come on in, and we'll have this affair. And in the end, the young man ends up dead. And so it's a warning. It's like, look where this leads, this kind of idea. And so that's what we've been working our way through. And in verse 10, we're at that midpoint of the story. And so it says, it's referring to this young man, how he goes to this street, he goes to this place in the dark, and in the night, to this place. And verse 10, it says, and behold, a woman comes to meet him, dressed as a harlot and cunning of heart. Now, we know that this woman is described as someone who has a husband. So she's not actually a harlot, but she's dressed that way, and she's on the prowl. And so here she comes, and she's looking for him, and she's going to seduce this young man. And the young man knew this was going to happen. That's why he went there in the first place, because he kind of wanted to be seduced. And so this is the cautionary tale. And so as we look at verse 10, well, what can we draw out of this today? Well, what I'm going to draw on is this idea of the company we keep. Something important to remember is that, well, I'm going to say this in a way maybe a little controversial, but people just aren't always out for your good. Even people that you think are out for your good aren't always out for your good. And something we have to be careful of in life is that sometimes people seem like your friend when they're not. Now, of course, it's not my goal to be really hyper, paranoid or anything like that. That's not what we want to teach. But there's a lesson here that even though this woman is coming to meet this young man, and she's dressed in an alluring way and cunning in her heart, and then in the next verses you'll see how she speaks nicely to him and tries to, well, she seduces him, right? She tries to draw him in. She presents herself in a very positive, friendly way. Well, in our lives, there are going to be people who are not always actually what they seem to be. They're not always being the friend that they seem to be. Sometimes when you're tempted in life to do things that are wrong, or to follow after a vice, or to do something you shouldn't do, there'll be lots of people there cheering you on, telling you to go down that road, do it. Sometimes there'll be people you don't even know that'll just be like, hey, this is great, good for you, pal. And there'll be a lot of encouragement by some people to do the thing that is actually wrong, or even sometimes downright evil. And so we got to be careful about that, and not allow ourselves to think that just because this person is speaking nicely to me doesn't mean that what they're telling me to do or encouraging me to do is necessarily the good thing to do. Sometimes people will encourage you to do the wrong thing because they're opportunists. They're looking to gain something from you. So they're con artists. They're not everybody's like an actual professional con artist, but they're, in a sense, there's lots of people in life who will be like a con artist. They'll encourage you to make bad choices because they're going to profit from the bad choice. And so you got to be careful with that. Now, there's also other people who, they're not necessarily going to profit from your bad choice, but they will, in a sense, justify themselves, right? That they make choices like that. So they want you to make choices like that because it feels better about themselves if they're not the only one making bad choices. And so they'll encourage you, yeah, you should do this, because they want to do this and they want to feel right about what they're doing. And so if they can just get others to join them, then they'll feel better about it. And so there's that as well. And then the other one, and this one's a little more subtle, but sometimes even your friends can do this. And they're not being good friends when they do this, but they will do this. And what happens is sometimes your friend just wants to have a positive relationship with you, They want to have a positive feeling relationship with you. And so they may encourage you to do things you really shouldn't do because they're just trying to be a friend, I guess. They're trying to make you feel good. It's like, oh no, that's good. Good for you, man. And it's like, well, is it really good for them? Like, see, true friendship would be the kind of friendship where you're able to say to somebody, don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Your life is going to be damaged. Don't do that. And that's what a true friend should do. But often, perhaps well-meaning, but maybe the person is more interested in just having a positive experience with you rather than challenging you. I thank God for the friends in my life who are willing to challenge me sometimes and tell me I'm doing something I shouldn't. It's helpful, but people are not always what they seem to be, and sometimes people encourage you to do things from selfish motives, even just the selfish motive of I don't want to have a disruption in my friendship. It's kind of a selfish motive, even that. And so, what I'm drawing on today is to say this: we all need to have a little bit, a healthy amount of cynicism, and by that I simply mean a healthy amount of okay, I can't just simply assume that everybody's out for my good. Sometimes people aren't. And so I have to be careful about who I decide to allow to be the biggest influences in my life. So this young man was going to a place where he knew she would be there and he wanted to be seduced by her. And what he should have chosen was instead to stay at home or to be with friends who would help him make better choices or to listen to his father or whatever. And we need to do this in our life. If we want to combat the draws to sin in our life, we need to make decisions to have good friends in our life, really good friends in our life, people that we've given permission to challenge us and say to us, that's wrong. Don't do this. We need to build relationships around righteousness rather than appetites. And that's kind of the key phrase for today. If you only build relationships around appetites, and by that what I mean is I make friends with people who like the same things I like. If that's the only reason you have a friend is that we share some interest, well, then that's an appetite. It may be a good appetite, maybe a bad appetite, but it's just an appetite. But what we want to do is build friendships where it's centered around, well, I guess an appetite for goodness, right? A desire to do and be good people. And if you have friends like that in your life, they'll challenge you when you go astray, right? They'll be, hey man, don't do that. Don't do that. And that's what you need. This young man wanted the person to seduce him. So he made friends with her. He knew he could. And she helped him go down a road that ultimately cost him his life. Now, I think that's the lesson we'll draw out of chapter 10 today. I hope that's useful to you. God willing, tomorrow we'll come on and we'll look at verse 11. I said chapter, I meant verse 10. Tomorrow we'll come on and do verse 11. In the meantime, keep pursuing God and ask God to help you have good, strong relationships in your life. Have a good day.